Maldives has a new president and his first order of business. It's his poll promise to remove foreign military presence from the country. Without naming India, Mohamed Muizzu pledged to remove the Indian military presence from this small but strategically important island nation. But was it an ill-informed decision? Because the Indian military presence in Maldives is minuscule. It includes 1 Dornier aircraft and 2 helicopters gifted generously by the Indian government. That's it. Take a look at this report.
Is Maldives' new president a puppet in his own country? Or is he a man being misled by ill-intentioned forces? We ask this question because the new president of this small but strategically important island nation has made a significant pledge right after being declared the winner. An ill-informed pledge that will harm the people of Maldives in the long run.
We will be sending back other military forces based in the Maldives according to the law, and we will do that accordingly. The people who brought other military forces don't want to keep them here. We don't want them to be here, and the people of the Maldives have decided and want to send them back.
That's the pledge of Maldives' new president, Mohamed Muizzu. After a resounding victory in the recently concluded presidential elections, Muizzu has vowed to remove foreign military forces from the island nation. He stopped short of naming which country's troops he will remove. But you shouldn't be surprised if we tell you he was referring to India, the only foreign power with a military deployment in the archipelago. After all, the new president of Maldives is a known ally of China. His entire election campaign revolved around an India out campaign. This decision came after New Delhi placed a small unit of security personnel to operate the 4 Indian aircraft gifted to the Maldives to patrol its vast maritime territory. But Muizzu has brushed aside media descriptions of him as a pro-China leader. He says he will be, quote-unquote, pro-Maldives. It begs the question, why then does the new president-elect want to remove Indian presence from his country? Because the truth is, India's military presence in the atoll state is very small. It includes just 2 Dhruv advanced light helicopters which have been operating in Malé for several years, and 1 Dornier multi-purpose aircraft, which was given to the Maldives National Defence Force in 2020. The Indian government gifted the aircraft to Malé with only one condition. While Maldives will command and control the aircraft, the running costs will be borne by India. The Dornier has since been assisting in joint surveillance activities by India and the Maldives in the exclusive economic zone of the Indian Ocean. It helps keep an eye on seaborne terrorists and enhances Maldives' surveillance abilities. In November 2021, the Maldives National Defence Force revealed that 75 Indian military troops stayed in the Maldives to assist in the operations of the Dornier aircraft and the 2 helicopters. This tiny presence of Indian troops has been projected as a threat to Maldives' security by the Muizzu faction. Muizzu has won the presidential election after defeating incumbent President Ibrahim Solih. The election was also seen as a determining factor in deciding which country would exert greater influence over the strategically vital archipelago state in the Indian Ocean. The outgoing president, Ibrahim Mohamed Solih, who was elected in 2018, has faced allegation from Muizzu that he had allowed unchecked Indian presence in the Maldives. Solih, however, has insisted that the Indian military's presence in the Maldives was solely for the purpose of constructing a dockyard under an agreement between the 2 governments. Solih had also realigned Maldives' relations with the traditional benefactor India after his predecessor, Abdullah Yameen, moved to Maldives into Beijing's orbit, borrowing heavily from China for infrastructure projects. Consider this. India provides the largest number of training opportunities for the Maldivian National Defence Force, meeting around 70% of their defence training requirements. In February of 2021, India extended a $50 million line of credit to the Maldives for defence projects. At the same time, New Delhi also signed a deal with the Malay government to construct and maintain a critical naval facility for the country's military. The agreement to develop, support and maintain the Coast Guard harbour in Uttarathila Falhu was signed by Jaishankar and Maria Didi, Maldives Defence Minister. At the time, Didi said that the harbour and dockyard would be another significant milestone. India-Maldives defence cooperation extends to the areas of joint exercises also. The countries carry out war games that began in 2021. In fact, the bilateral relationship with India has helped the Maldives' development story. In the last few months, India has been among Maldives' largest trading partners. The two countries very closely dealt with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. With tourism being the mainstay of Maldivian economy, the country has become a major tourist destination for some Indians and a job destination for others. Undoubtedly, India plays a pivotal role in the development story of the Maldives. Why then make such claims? Mr. Muizzu. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy? 6 decades on, people still have their doubts. The Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated the late American president, that there was only one killer. But new revelations refute this. They indicate that there was in fact a second killer. A Secret Service agent who witnessed JFK's assassination has now come out and relayed his version of the story. But before we get to that, let's recall what happened in the public eye. What horror unfolded before the people of Dallas on November 22nd back in 1963. JFK and his wife Jackie sat in a black Lincoln Continental. Their motorcade was led by 2 open-top limousines. It was proceeding at a stately pace through a street lined with people. The President and the First Lady were waving at onlookers. The motorcade was heading towards what was known locally as the Triple Underpass. Suddenly, JFK was seen clutching his throat. Jackie leant over to attend to him. An instant later, it looked like a lightning bolt struck JFK's head. It was blown up and thrown back. Jackie frantically crawled over the rear seat of the open car and climbed onto its rear deck. She was grasping at something. It was later described as a piece of her husband's shattered skull. Such a harrowing moment. People saw it with their own eyes. In fact, at least 4 people caught it on camera. The most vivid version is that captured by a dressmaker named Abraham Zapruder. A lot of people watched it, but the full version wasn't out until 12 years later. The exact moment in which the bullet strikes Kennedy's head was kept hidden for more than a decade. Why? Because it was too gory to handle. Now you can watch it on YouTube. In the clip, it seemed that the blast came from in front of JFK and blew his head backwards. But it was dismissed as an optical illusion. The Warren Commission concluded that JFK's assassin, Oswald, was positioned behind him. It said that Kennedy was hit from behind. He slammed his chin forward to his chest, and then his head rebounded backwards. But what if? What if there was a possibility that the shot did come from the front? Oswald was standing at the back. He fired shots from a 6th-floor window in the Texas School Book Depository. But was there another gunman positioned in the front of Kennedy? Well, ex-Secret Service agent Paul Landis believes there was. Where exactly, he's not sure. On the day of Kennedy's assassination, a 28-year-old Landis was assigned to protect the First Lady. He was riding on the running board of a black Cadillac behind the presidential limousine. That is when a shot rang out. He soon heard a second one and saw the president's head split open. This he had spoken about earlier, but what I'm about to tell you now are the revelations that he has made after 50 years of silence. On the day of Kennedy's assassination, Landis spotted an intact bullet in the back of the presidential limousine. On finding the bullet, he reportedly pocketed it. He didn't want it to fall into the hands of souvenir hunters or the press. Landis accompanied First Lady Jackie Kennedy into the Dallas hospital as surgeons fruitlessly tried to save her husband's life. Landis found himself next to the president's stretcher. At the end, only one bullet was found, that too on Governor John B. Connolly's stretcher, who was also injured in the incident. Now, the Warren Commission's theory says that Kennedy and the governor were hit by the same bullet, that one of the bullets fired that day entered Kennedy's body from behind, then exited through his throat before striking Governor Connolly. But Landis believes that the bullet he found had only hit Kennedy. If his theory is correct, it could indicate that Connolly was hit by an entirely different bullet, perhaps by one fired by someone besides Lee Harvey Oswald. Initially, the public largely accepted the Warren Commission's version. 87% of Americans polled by Gallup agreed that Oswald shot the former president. But criticism mounted over the next decade or so. It peaked in the late 1970s with the release of the Zapruder film we just told you about. Fast forward to 2017, 61% of adult Americans believe that more than one person was involved in Kennedy's assassination. So, were there two gunmen involved? What do you think? These are all, after all, just conspiracy theories. We can only speculate. The lone gunman theory still remains the accepted conclusion. But I ask again, what do you think? Our next story comes from Iran. The country is on edge. A young girl has been hospitalized in Tehran. There are grave allegations from a human rights group. They say she was beaten into a coma by Iran's feared morality police. Her name is Armita Garawand. Reports say she has sustained a severe physical assault. Footage from the incident has come into question. It shows Armita being carried off a train by other women at a metro station. Yes, she was assaulted by women, Iran's female morality police. She is then placed on the platform. She lays there, apparently unconscious. This is what we know so far. Armita has sustained a severe physical assault. She was assaulted by the morality police for not complying with the country's rules on the hijab. This is what reports are saying. Iran's state-run media has published edited footage of the incident. It claims that Armita, the victim, had fainted after a drop in blood pressure. So she simply fell off a train and lay unconscious. All mentions of Iran's notorious morality police wiped off. A 16-year-old girl has been left in a coma. She's being treated under heavy security after allegedly being assaulted on the Tehran subway. Reports say that Iran's morality police, female-led morality police, is to blame. Let me repeat. Reports are saying that female officers assaulted her. Why? Because she was not wearing a headscarf. Does this sound familiar to you? Are you getting a sense of déjà vu? That's because you've seen this story play out before, almost a year ago to be precise. Remember this face. It's the face which once lit up a billboard in Times Square. It has been painted on murals in Paris and Berlin. There are streets named after her in Vienna and Los Angeles now. But more importantly, she became the face of Iran's revolt against its morality police. Say her name, Mahsa Amini. The story of Armita Garawand is sadly very similar to the story of Mahsa Amini. About a year ago, 22-year-old Amini died in the custody of Iran's feared morality police. Why was she in custody? Because she had violated the hijab law. The law mandates women and girls cover their hair and bodies. We all know what happened after that. Mahsa's death gave birth to a revolt. Protests nationwide, all led by women and girls. We saw women tossing their headscarves in defiance. They wanted an end to the Islamic Republic's hardline rule. A violent crackdown followed. Thousands were arrested. At least 500 protesters were killed, including teenagers and children. The Mahsa movement, it was called. Some said it challenged the legitimacy of Iran's hardline clerics since it took power in 1979. But did it really? A year later, I'm telling you the story of Armita, another woman assaulted by the morality police. In fact, she has been assaulted by female police officers. A year after Mahsa Amini's death, I'm yet again recounting the horrors inflicted by the morality police of Iran. Let me refresh your memory about what this morality police really is. Gasht-e-Irshad, it translates to guidance patrols. The morality police is a unit of Iran's police force. It was established under former hardline president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in 1983. Wearing a hijab became mandatory in Iran, but it was only in 2006 that this dreaded unit began patrolling the streets. Their task was to enforce the laws of Islamic dress code in public. Most of the social regulations are based on the state's interpretation of the Sharia law. It requires both men and women to dress modestly, but it's no secret that the prime target of Iran's morality police have been women and young girls. While the feared outfit paused its patrols after Mahsa Amini's death, the morality police is back on the streets of Iran now. Its mandate is the same: warn women against breaking the country's hijab rules, take legal action, arrest them if necessary, detain women in so-called re-education facilities for flouting the dress code. In fact, the regime claimed that they would try a softer approach. Is this the softer approach? Clearly, the morality police has a much darker side. What else explains what could have happened to women like Armita Garavant, Mahsa Amini, and countless others whose name has not made headlines yet? Question is, will Armita face the same fate as Mahsa? Rights group says that she's in a coma. Authorities have denied this. One activist says that security forces have forbidden Armita's parents from posting her picture on social media. Reports say her family is forbidden from talking to human rights groups. In fact, in a video posted on the state news agency, her parents say Armita had suffered a drop in blood pressure. They are parroting the regime's line. So it's hard to make out what exactly happened. What we know is this: another young woman is fighting for her life in Iran. We hope that unlike Mahsa, Armita lives to tell her story. Our cover story tonight is from what is now becoming the most dangerous stretch of water in the world, the Yellow Sea. The semi-enclosed body of water is located between mainland China and the Korean Peninsula. If the wars of men and nations were not enough, even this region is becoming into a new theater of conflict. China wants absolute control of the Yellow Sea. It wants to deploy its contingents there, station its warships, control shipping routes, and dictate trade rules. It monitors all warships that pass through it. This is mostly because of Taiwan, a territory which China claims to own. Among China's defense or offense mechanism is also an underwater trap. This underwater trap is used to block submarines. Too bad that these tactics now seem to be backfiring. On the 21st of August, China got caught in its own trap. Look at this report now. At least 55 Chinese sailors are feared dead after their submarine got entangled in a trap which China had laid for its enemies. It has ended up ensnaring its own people. The report states that a Chinese PLA submarine struck a chain and anchor obstacle that was placed for Western vessels. The collision caused system failure. The submarine's oxygen ran out, its batteries depleted. The crew got poisoned. A total of 55 Chinese officials allegedly died. This includes 22 officers, 7 officer cadets, 9 petty officers, and 17 sailors. And the cause of all their deaths is believed to be hypoxia. The source of this information is British intelligence. China naturally has denied the whole story. But there is credible evidence that this is precisely what happened. And if it did happen, then this is a huge embarrassment for China. A bitter reminder of how its muscle flexing can boomerang. For the last 6 years, China has tried to convert this region into its playground. It has bullied foreign fishing vessels, rammed into ships that it perceives to be a threat, and tried to alter the routes of any ships passing through. Not just in the Yellow Sea, but also beyond. Take the South China Sea, for instance. It begins where the Yellow Sea ends. China has been bullying the Philippines here. Let me explain. 2 weeks back, it installed an underwater barrier to hinder the movement of Filipino vessels. This barrier was a floating cordon of sorts. It was placed near the Scarborough Shoal. The Philippines removed this barrier. It even released a video of its divers doing so. It seems this decision hasn't gone down too well with China. 24 hours back, a Filipino fishing boat collided with a foreign vessel. The collision led to the deaths of 3 fishermen and other 8 crew members who also suffered injuries. Guess where this accident happened? Near the Scarborough Shoal, the same area where Beijing laid its underwater barrier. Was this collision an act of revenge by Beijing? It certainly seems so. However, the identity of the vessel remains unknown. So the authorities are not naming China just yet. They're trying to investigate who owned it. But the thing is, China's track record speaks for itself. You see, it has a history of ramming its fishing vessels into smaller boats. A history of bullying boats that pass through its self-claimed regions on land and on sea. Let's talk about the Scarborough Shoal, a small but a strategic reef and fishing ground. It has been a major source of tension between Manila and Beijing. But what exactly is it? Well, the Scarborough Shoal is essentially a rock, located atop an atoll or a ring-shaped island. It is a disputed territory claimed both by China and the Philippines. Every time a Filipino vessel passes through here, there's a fat chance that it gets rammed by a Chinese ship. This has been the status quo for several years now, but now China's trying to up the ante. It has increased its overtures and acts of foul play. And every time it is questioned about this, it blames the United States. Listen to this.
The South China Sea was in peace until the US came to disrupt it. The US provision of 2 outdated patrol boats to the Philippines, which are not of much practical use, exposes its actual role as a disruptor and saboteur of peace and stability in the South China Sea. We urge the US to stop meddling in the South China Sea issue and stop undermining peace and stability in the region.
You heard that. We urge the US to stop undermining stability in the region, says a country that has undermined peace and stability almost everywhere. You see, the Yellow Sea and the South China Sea are just 2 pieces of this puzzle. China's bullying tactics spread across the length and breadth of the Indo-Pacific region. Now, as I speak, China also has ongoing territorial or economic disputes with countries like South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, Laos and Mongolia. If we speak of Japan, China's fighting it over the Senkaku Islands. They are located in the East China Sea. No one stays here. Japan calls these islands Senkaku. China's named them Diaoyu. If we speak of Indonesia, the fight there is over the Natuna Islands. China has been accused of using intimidating island patrol tactics. Also accused of fishing illegally in waters claimed by Indonesia. China also claims parts of Vietnam, especially the Paracel Islands. In 2020, the Chinese army sank a Vietnamese fishing vessel near the Paracel Islands. The tactic was the same. A Chinese vessel went and rammed the Vietnamese boat. Next, we have Brunei and Malaysia. These countries share the South China Sea, but China wants the sea all to itself. Beijing has developed military bases on islands and created artificial islands. Time and again, it also deploys maritime militia to bully the 2 nations. Where is China going to stop? How many more countries is it going to fight? How many more disputes is it going to ignite? It's perhaps time that all these countries come together to call out China's aggression. On this show, we will certainly continue to do so. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.